Excellent. Well, welcome everybody. Sorry about the technical issues. I'll have to find out what's going on at Crowdcast today, but appreciate you all from joining us. And Alex, we got about 40 minutes according to my Zoom info, my Zoom account here. So it's a free account, so we'll have to cut it off there. Just a couple show notes. So October 24th is my next show, how to turn rejected candidates into allies. And then on November 14th, we'll do a demo of Curious Things. Actually, one of my favorite tool I saw at HR Tech last week. It's an AI-based phone interview tool that will basically do phone screens for your candidates using audio, using machine learning and AI. It's pretty cool tech. And they're based out of Australia, and we're going to have one of their founders on to talk about the product and give you a demo overall. I got a couple other shows coming up with TalView and Skill Scout, and those will be announced shortly over on regtechlive.com, hopefully. Just a quick shout out, I'll be in New York next week at 2 weeks at HireConf on October 22nd. So if you are in the area, definitely check that out. I think it's hireconf.com is the URL for that show overall. So today we've got Alex Murphy. He's the CEO of Jobsync here. It's a new company that he's working on to help with converting more applicants, particularly on the Indeed platform and the Facebook platform. So, Alex, it's good to have you. Welcome to the show, first of all. And I guess everybody, history of your background, because you've been in the space for a while. So,
well, Chris, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, I guess thumbnail background on my journey to get here. I started back in 2001 as a co-founder of Job.com. Did that for a handful of years. Most notable thing about my Job.com days was working with Thad Price, who's the CEO at Talroo now, which was always fun to go back and reminisce with him.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he and I actually came out of the same economics program in college, and he was a few years behind me in terms of graduating. So he joined us, I think in 2001 or 2002, and then spent 12 years there, and then went on to Job Seekers and Talroo. After Job.com, I went into the e-commerce world, did a turnaround with a brick and mortar store. It was actually fairly formative for what ultimately we're doing with Jobsync in terms of what we're observing in the marketplace right now, specifically in that 2006-07 time period is when Amazon launched their marketplace, which is where they allow other retailers to sell products on Amazon. And it really kind of was a core basis for how Amazon's grown up to be more platform than just a point seller in the e-commerce space. We'll talk about that, I think, in a little bit, about the evolution of job boards. In 2008, I came back into the online career space and joined the team at Beyond, helped them with user acquisition, a little bit of product direction, and ultimately business development oversight as well. Helped grow it to 60 million users from about 100,000 on their own platform. So a lot of experience there, reading, looking and talking to customers, users, candidates about their experiences, and kind of over that time period, really honed in on what I consider to be a kind of a real disaster for job board operators in terms of the ATS apply path, and losing sight of that. So that took me to 2016, left Beyond, and have then started a handful of companies in and around the space. Got an ad tech company, job indexing and scraping business, and have been doing a lot of consulting. And one of those clients I've been consulting with is Rethink Data. And that brings us to Jobsync, which is a project that we've been working on together between my job indexing business, which is called Job Wrapper, and the application delivery service of Rethink. We kicked that off earlier this year.
All right, awesome. So this whole concept of native apply is pretty interesting. I guess tell us, kind of the evolution of this concept here, and then we'll start getting into more of what you guys are doing there.
Yep. So when we use the phrase native apply, we're essentially meaning having the entire application process take place on the job site or job platform. So, go back 20 years ago, you post a job on Monster, and like that afternoon, you get 50 applications that are in your email inbox. And that was revolutionary at the time. As time went on, two things happened. One was that became overwhelming for any company that was trying to recruit at scale. So there was need for software to support the management of those applicants. And the second was around diversity and inclusion concerns, and specifically the evolution of creation of all sorts of regulations around EEO compliance and ensuring that the application paths and so forth were consistent, so that disadvantaged groups weren't excluded by these technologies. And so because of those two things, companies started to push to have job boards send users to their applicant tracking systems to apply, rather than to have the application take place on the job site. So this change in workflow or candidate experience really took the ability of the job board to generate their own product, which is to generate applicants, out of the job board's hands and put it into the applicant tracking system's hands. And with that ability, what has happened over the course of years is more and more recruiters and companies have looked at and bought into the idea of asking more and more questions in the very first application step to try to screen out candidates. And that process has resulted in all sorts of bad candidate experiences have been, talked about in many different circles. Ultimately, at the end of the day, though, what's really happening is...
Sorry.
No worries. Ultimately, what's happening is that companies, in trying to screen out candidates that are not a good match, are finding that they are, in fact, just losing out on applicants that they otherwise should get because they abandoned the apply process. And the majority of those that would be a good match are dropping out even more so. So the most sought after, the most high in demand talent is the first group of people to drop out of that ATS apply path. And so, with the, jumping forward to kind of today, companies that are large, that have the wherewithal, are building systems to support an application process that mirrors what is on the applicant tracking system. So Indeed has a native apply solution that supports that. ZipRecruiter does, and a number of others like Facebook and Nuvu and LinkedIn and Glassdoor and ZipRecruiter are all building out this functionality. Some have been doing it for quite a long time, like Monsters has had custom question functionality for a long time. And what these job boards are doing is essentially taking that same step that Amazon took 10 years ago, 12 years ago, to essentially create more of a platform experience for the candidate. So instead of the candidate starting on the job site and then going to 12 different applicant tracking systems from 12 different companies to apply and re-enter all of their personal and demographic information, upload the resume, and spend all that time doing these steps over and over again. The platforms are able to make that part of the process really smooth and easy. They're able to embed and host the questions and answers so all of the necessary parts like EEO and compliance and electronic signatures can be done effectively. And most importantly, from like an aggregate conversion perspective, what these job sites are able to do is make sure that it works really, really well on mobile, where, even still today in 2019, there's a large number of ATSs that don't support mobile application experiences very well at all, if at all.
Don't I know that?
Yep.
Yeah, it's the ATSs aren't doing, most ATSs aren't doing companies any favors these days as far as the apply process goes. It's just, to me, it's always been horrible, and it's only improved slightly over the years. And we really need, I think, solutions like this, Alex, to help them drive those conversions, because it is all about conversions, right?
It is all about conversions, and then I'd go one step further. So I think it's about getting enough of an introduction of the company so that when the recruiter does call that the applicant knows who the company is. So, I think that it's funny how things can end up with the pendulum swinging too far in one direction as a reaction to where it was. So if 2014 showed kind of was the worst of times in terms of the ATS apply path, mobile experience, etc., the pendulum swung out over to the other side, where all of a sudden we had one-click applies, check all the boxes, apply to 25 jobs at once, really thin, easy applies that would have like name, email, and a resume, but not have any information about the actual job. And consequently, the recruiter would try to reach out, schedule a call, and the candidate wouldn't even recognize the name of the company. That didn't do anybody any favors either. That just created more work for recruiters.
Yeah.
So there's something that's a balance in between where, we don't require candidates to re-enter their information 50 times, but where we ask maybe the 5 to 8 relevant questions that demonstrate intent, and where the candidate is being respected for their time, not being asked to upload photos of their their certificates and so forth, things that were really far too intimate at the first stage and should be kept until the end when you're getting ready to make an offer.
Yeah. All right, so let's get started with the demo here. I want you to take us through your, I think you got a video you're going to share and walk us through. So let's get started.
Yeah. So first, we're going to use Indeed here as an example. Similar kind of process works on Facebook and on others. So first off, within Indeed, you can see what jobs use their native apply process or Indeed apply, because they have this designation here where it says apply with your Indeed resume. It may say easy apply. It may say instant apply. There's some textual designation that says this is going to be an Indeed apply. These jobs get more clicks. They get more visibility because they are mobile friendly, mobile optimized. They're going to get even greater distribution on mobile devices. And so companies that are tracking what their application volume looks like over time will see that they're getting consistently more traffic if they have an Indeed apply experience than if they don't. And maybe put it another way, if you're standing still and you have a job or an ATS, or an apply experience where you're taking them to the ATS, you might start to see less and less traffic to your job listings, because that traffic's going to Indeed apply jobs instead. Mm-hmm. The second designation here is that it has this orange button, apply now. Conversely, I'll just hop over here to Indeed. Conversely, if you were going to have an apply path that took you off of Indeed, it's going to have a blue button, says apply on company site. And by comparison, the orange button gets significantly higher click-through rates, which means that they get significantly more applications. As the user goes through and starts the apply process, if they're logged in, they're going to see their profile already populated with their resume that's been uploaded, their background information, phone number. They can add a cover letter if need be. And then we start to get into custom questions. So in this particular case, this job is, and the first set of questions are going to come out around some of the EEO questions and capturing the disability information. The user's able to go through and select, all of the proper EEO designations. This page can exactly render out the same way that it does on an applicant tracking system. It can have clickouts and pop-ups to provide definitions so that it stays within the guardrails of compliance.
Mm-hmm.
So the team on the legal side is able to be is happy with the process. Capture any other additional custom questions that are related to building out a completed application, be it optional or required fields. Wrap up on the final EEO piece here, and then ultimately get through to a summary piece where the candidate is going to click apply. And so where Jobsync fits in this process, we take the entire application schema. So this is all of the required fields, questions, answers, structure out of the applicant tracking system, and then build the file of jobs and deliver it into Indeed, deliver it into Nuvu, deliver it into Facebook, manage that process, take care of doing hourly updates on any adjustments that have been made to that application process, and submit that and manage and host that with the job site. Then when the candidate clicks apply, that payload is sent out through to our system. We convert the data structure from being in the job site's data structure, turn around and then post that into the applicant tracking system. And then the applicant's record shows up inside the workflow just as if the user had submitted, or the candidate had submitted their application on the applicant tracking system itself. The recruiter can start to work from there. We do this like you see here on Facebook, on Indeed. We do this on Facebook. So this is one of our clients, TripAdvisor. This jobs tab is managed through the job feed that we deliver into Facebook, such that when an applicant clicks on one of these jobs, the job comes up, it's formatted into the Facebook kind of feed structure. And then when the user clicks on apply,
is that job also in the Facebook job marketplace?
That's exactly right. Yep. So it's in the job market. The way that they do distribution of jobs within Facebook, there really are like three places. There's the jobs marketplace. There is the jobs tab that the company can turn on. And then there is the fans and followers of that corporate site, and also their secondary connections. Those jobs can get fed in, and Facebook, relatively new to the jobs game, they're constantly experimenting and doing R&D around how to improve the experience for both their users as well as for the companies to drive greater and greater engagement. It populates with this information and then has the custom questions that are related to what's required inside the ATS. User clicks send, and 45 seconds later, that candidate's record is sitting in the ATS. And so that's the basic gist of it. So we are simply taking these experiences that candidates have on the larger at scale job sites, making a radical improvement to the candidate experience, and then delivering those candidates into the ATS as simply a layer sitting in between the different systems. We don't require any kind of login. Setup is really fast. It takes less than 30 minutes to get an integration set up for most of our ATSs, be it on SuccessFactors or Greenhouse or Smart Recruiters. It's really, really fast. Some of the ATSs require more of a custom setup along the way, like Taleo Enterprise. We support that does take more of a custom build out, but at the end of the day, we're working on behalf of the company to make sure that the experience of getting applications is straightforward and essentially exactly the same within the job sites as it is on their applicant tracking system. And like you said, centered around delivering more applicants.
Yeah. Let me just mute the group here for a second, Alex. Okay. What's the cost of this, Alex? Give us a sense of that, how this works, and how the integration takes place too. If you could.
Yeah. So so the integration is always ATS specific, but I'll just give a couple examples. But let me start with the cost. So it's utility based, and it's tied to which applicant. Tied to the volume of jobs that you post. So it starts at $199 a month. That covers your first 100 jobs, and then it's a cost per job thereafter. The next 100 jobs are $1. The next 300 jobs are 60 cents each, goes to 40 cents, and it ultimately goes down to 5 cents per job if you're really recruiting at scale. Those costs are per platform that you're connected into. And then there is a setup fee that's tied to which ATS that you use, but it's generally around $1,000 to do the setup.
Yep. And what are your clients saying so far about it? I mean, like you got TripAdvisor here. What kind of results have they seen so far? Do you have any numbers you can share?
Yeah, so handful of hires, larger number of offers. It's essentially like we talk about in the space, active candidates and passive candidates. It is essentially a passive recruiting channel for them. They are getting to tap into a source and channel that they otherwise were not able to tap into. They started with us about 6 months ago, excited. They're expanding the program into other platforms and other brands. Right now, we have several hundred jobs of theirs up on Facebook, recruiting across, I think, about a dozen different countries. We launched a restaurant last week. In the first 12 hours, generated something about 40 applicants on the Facebook platform. So it is something where, if it's a job that's in one of those more high volume orientations, the quantity of candidates that come out of Facebook is very high. On the Indeed side, because of what happens, and this is true, I think, in the other job platforms as well, where they create a different amount of exposure and distribution based on what the application experience is. You see anywhere from 4 to 8 times more applicants if you use the native apply solution. That comes from a combination of significantly better conversion rates and much higher levels of distribution of those jobs. And obviously, performance is related to whether or not that applicant tracking system and the user path is resulting in somebody going from a page that asks you to log in rather than to sign up, or if it's a one-page apply with a lot of questions, obviously all these things start to play into account, but the more conservative side of improvements is 2 to 3x. The higher ends is 8x plus in terms of increases in applicants, which has just a radical change in outcomes from time to hire, cost per hire, et cetera.
Yeah. Got a couple questions from the chat room, Alex. Why is TripAdvisor live on Facebook but not Indeed, or are they?
It happened to be just that when we started with them, we weren't supporting Indeed yet. And we are in the middle of a conversation about Indeed.
Okay.
That's a good question.
And so basically, you guys set up the API that connects Facebook to the ATS of the company, correct?
So essentially, yeah, we sit in between and have one API that's connecting with the job site like Facebook or Indeed, and then another API that's connecting, or set of APIs that's connecting into the ATS. We use Rethink Data to power that. Rethink started on these integrations probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and has been doing a lot of work on that front. The time to get integrations with some of the larger applicant tracking systems like SuccessFactors took upwards of 18 months to complete. Just dealing with things like permissions with some of these larger enterprise applicant tracking systems took multiple months to complete. But when we get down to doing integration work, with SuccessFactors as an example, we have to get a username, company ID, and password for our API user, and we give the client company an implementation guide, and it takes the SuccessFactors system administrator less than 15 minutes to complete the integration work that we need to do in order to support it. So from thinking about what that means in terms of working with large-scale enterprise ATSs, integrations often are measured in terms of their timeline in quarters and months, and we're talking about minutes.
Okay. A couple more questions. Just explain the pricing again for us, Alex. Is there a setup fee as well?
Yep, there is a setup fee. It's generally around $1,000. It depends on the applicant tracking system and exactly what's going on. But for simplicity perspective, it's generally about $1,000 plus or minus a few hundred.
Okay.
The base cost per month is $200. I guess technically $199. That base cost covers the first 100 jobs, and then above and beyond the first 100 jobs, it is a cost per job. So at the end of the month, we count how many jobs were managed through the month, and then we bill based upon the actual number of jobs. So just for an example purpose, if a company had 250 jobs, the first 100 are covered in that base fee, the next 100 are $1 each, and the next 50 would be 60 cents each. So the total cost would be $329 for that month, and that's what would be billed to that client.
Okay, we're getting close to the end of time here, but Alex, what kind of traffic differences have you seen between Indeed and Facebook? Obviously, Indeed is the world's biggest job site, but how much traffic is Facebook delivering, do you think, percentage-wise?
Well, so I think Facebook is interesting. It's doing more and more. I think the most interesting thing about Facebook. So just to answer the question directly, to not dance around it. Indeed is the 1,000-pound gorilla, right? So I mean, Indeed is still that 1,000-pound gorilla. They have reach and audience that is really not matched anywhere. But Indeed is a job site, and people that go to Indeed go there because it's a job site and it's purposeful in terms of what they're doing at Indeed. That is a good thing. It is populated by people that are hyperactively job searching, that are trying to do everything that's, all the things that you wouldn't necessarily want to engage with those people, just in terms of clicking and applying lots of jobs and dealing with that side. It's also full of lots of people that are highly qualified in very specialized functional areas, from everything from programmers to data scientists. Facebook is interesting to me because as a channel, you are tapping into people that are much further up the funnel in terms of the decision-making process to go and look for a job. So if you're competing with others for a highly sought-after position, if you're competing with other companies to fill a position that it's difficult to fill, probably a better way to put it. Facebook's really interesting because it's introducing jobs to people in ways that they otherwise weren't being introduced. And the process of converting has a very, very low level of friction, which means that they're more likely to actually express interest, apply to a job, rather than if you try to build like a social campaign that took a person to a corporate career site that then they had to go do a search, then they had to go to an ATS, then they had to log in, maybe along the way you stop them for a CRM lead, and then they're finally going to get to that apply process. That user coming from Facebook that was very, very passively scratching at the surface of this job is really unlikely to convert. And lots of people, when they look at the metrics, that the data doesn't bear out that it's a worthwhile spend. In this case, it becomes a worthwhile spend because of the fact that that you're really tapping into an audience that you otherwise really weren't able to get. So I think that while it's important and understandable to want to compare and say, what's the volume of X versus Y or Indeed versus Facebook, you're really talking about fairly different strategies that both need to end up getting deployed if you want to have a fully well-rounded recruitment marketing strategy.
Yeah. So for like a TripAdvisor on Facebook, do you know roughly how many applicants they're getting on a monthly basis off of that, and how many jobs?
Of course
they
they do.
Yep.
Of course they do.
You can share.
Of course I can't.
Okay. We tried.
Yeah, that would definitely be proprietary type of data and information for them.
Yep. Okay. But they had not been using Facebook before this integration. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So this is all kind of new traffic for them, essentially.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and I think that, at the end of the day, TripAdvisor is recruiting in dozens and dozens of different markets with the different brands. There is no magic silver bullet for them. It's a matter of having a great mixture of different campaign strategies out there in the wild. And this is one of the parts of what creates holistically a successful recruiting strategy for them. We're happy to play the part that we can, but obviously it's part of something that's much larger on their efforts.
Yeah. And what about staffing firms, Alex? Do you work with any kind of staffing firms? Any noteworthy stories there?
No stories there yet. Our focus has really been much more centered around the enterprise experience, in large part because of the applicant tracking systems that we've been focused on working with. They cater to direct employers. They have much more specific questions. Staffing firms, they recruit for individual positions, but they're also often just trying to fill a pool of candidates to then start to fill the next position with. So the value proposition, time will tell. It just hasn't been a focus of ours. We can only really try to go boil one or two oceans at a time, if you will.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, tell everybody where to go find this, and then tell us about your upcoming Unleash appearance, because you're going to Unleash Paris in a few weeks.
Yep. So Jobsync.io. So Jobsync.io. We'd love to chat with you. And we are competing in there's startup battlefield competition on the 22nd, 23rd in Paris. We were selected as a finalist. Pretty honored to be in great company with companies from all around the world. The first round of the competition for us pits us against a couple of companies from Europe and one from APAC. They're all sitting there with AI and machine learning and all sorts of different buzzwords, and we're talking about making an application process more simple. So we're interested in trying to figure out how to solve a problem that we perceive to be nascent across
It's
the
big.
entire industry.
Yeah, it's massive.
So hopefully that resonates with the judges.
Yeah, definitely. Well, good luck out there, Alex, and we'll keep an eye on the award ceremony there, and hope you win.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
All right, it's gonna do it today, guys. I'll email you out when I get the recording live. Hopefully, Zoom did that for me, and gotta give a shout out to Crowdcast, find out what happened there. But hopefully, we'll see you next couple weeks on RecTech Live on the 24th for my next show. So that's it for today. I'm Chris Russell. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.